Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm hanging out with Edwin, Nagy, and Brianna Beard. How are you folks doing today?
Really well, and you?
Good. You both come to me by way of Frog God Games, which has a Kickstarter going on right now. But before we get into any of that, you'd both be so kind to kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you. I'll start with you, Brianna.
Sure. My name is Brianna Beard. I have been with Frog God for not quite a year, but I've just been I do the Kickstarter videos, and I'm also the business development manager for reaching out to individual stores and kind of just seeing what they need, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's been a fun journey so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes in the future.
All right, and I am Edwin, as Dave said. I'm excited to be here. I'm a partner in Frog God, and I am our 5e fashion designer, editor, rules lawyer, and also do some project management and sort of general management behind the scenes. Yeah, it seems like a good start. I like D&D. I like horror gaming. I like all sorts of things.
Are you both involved with the current project that is now being crowdfunded, Splinters of Faith?
Yes. Mm.
Yeah, so I did I basically do the final 5e review of everything, and for a lot of our products, I also do if it was written in some other game system, I'll do the 5e translation, but at a minimum, I do the 5e sort of editing pass on it. So I was involved in that sense for Splinters, and then I think Brianna had a little more on the sales side of trying to get this thing out to the public.
Yeah, I've been kind of working on the Kickstarter itself, but like I said, so my sister and we do the Kickstarter videos for Frog God, and this was the most recent one that we did. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of proud of how it turned out.
It's pretty good.
Thank you.
It's a pretty good video.
So whoever wants to jump in first, feel free, but tell me a little bit about Splinters of Faith.
I'm going to start because Brianna knows more. And so I'm going to say my 3 seconds, and then Brianna can dig in a little deeper if there's something there. But basically I guess it's up to 11 adventures. It's a, huge long adventure path about putting back together a major artifact. And it's a series of adventures that I think you could either play as written, just in order, go through them, and then, or which is what I think a lot of us tend to do, grab this one and that one and say, oh, my home group's going to a temple and they're about 7th level, and oh, here's an adventure that goes to a temple. Let's bring that in. And that's so that's the sort of basic framework. I don't know if you want to talk a little more about any of the fun pieces there.
Yeah. So the game was originally individual modules that have been released previously, but they have been expanded upon and added to for the new edition. It's all one thing now. It's nice that it's not, you have one cohesive unit. And I honestly, for me, the artwork is just so fantastic that it really gives you a lot of ideas for the game. I mean, obviously the rules themselves are great too, but for me, I'm a very visual person, and especially when I was putting the Kickstarter or the video together, I was looking at all this artwork going, man, this honestly, all of this gives me so many ideas for adventures that this could be. I think it's a very good product, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on the team.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah. Do you each have a favorite part of it? Something that kind of speaks to you? I know you mentioned the art being evocative.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I definitely love the artwork. That's one of my absolute favorite things. But I also love just the overarching storyline. I love anything that has individual little stories that all culminate and lead up to one big story. That's a chef's kiss amazing. I love it.
The one piece.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, and then I'll throw it back to you, Edwin. The one piece on the Kickstarter page looks like a cover image, and it looks like a grandmom basically riding a dragon, which is pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, that one is just great. I was like, because that one we didn't actually put in the Kickstarter video because I don't think they got it to us, and they were just like, oh yeah, by the way, we're doing this, and I'm like, that one is amazing. Why are we not? It's so cool. Anything to do with dragons, it's like that. That's classic D&D. That pulls you in and makes you go, hey, you know what this is?
Yeah,
there's one of the 2Ds.
It's one of the 2Ds for sure.
I think the part that really impressed me on it was, I mean, it's basically, I'm going to say 9, I think it's 9 temples. Maybe it's 10, no, it's 9 temples, I think, and then one haunted house. But the diversity of the temples just sort of blew me away. You know, I'm sort of doing one and then I go to the next one. I was like, this is a completely different world. And then I go to the next one and it's again completely different. Just some really impressive imagination on coming up with what a temple adventure can be, and you know who the people are in the temple and how you go about doing the thing that needs doing in that temple. They're all really, really diverse, and that to me was really exciting to see, because you sort of think about, like, at first blush, like, oh, well, you're going to go to 10 temples and you're basically going to get this artifact blessed 10 different times. But then you start seeing what these temples are and how different they are and how much fun you can have. And I think as a player exploring that world and sort of being introduced to each of those new temples, it seems like it'd be super fun. Like, it was fun just reading it and editing it, but I could imagine actually running into them would be way more fun.
Are they temples that are from Fraga Games campaigns or settings? Or are they generic? Are there kind of like tips for introducing this if you're playing a different kind of game?
So the adventure is set in the Lost Lands, which is Frog God's sort of home world, which is a pretty kitchen sink kind of the world it's got everything in it, but it is described. So it's in that world, and the temples, some of them I think have been seen before in other adventures. I don't think any of them have been explored before in other adventures, but they're near towns. Many of them are near towns that we have other activities going on in. So that part is grounded. There is support for, hey, if this is your home campaign, this one wants to be in the mountains, this one wants to be, somewhere tropical, this one's a desert thing or whatever. So that part, we try always to give a nod both to people who are playing in the Lost Lands and people who might take our adventures and either take bits and pieces of them or take them whole cloth and put them in their world.
So are each of you, I guess I'll ask this, are each of you currently playing in any games?
Not at present. I I've kind of taken a small break just because I've got a lot going on, but at some point I'm definitely going to be hopping back in, because I got into D&D and just general tabletop RPGs in high school, kind of through my dad actually, and my family. We love to sit around and play just off the cuff games sometimes, and it's a lot of fun, but I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, but I will definitely be jumping back in soon.
I'm in the opposite boat, that I've been letting all the other stuff I'm supposed to be doing slide because I'm in way too many games. So yes, I have I'm in an old school Essentials game that we're playing through Stonehell Dungeon, and that's just been a hoot. I don't know. It's been 4, 5, 6 months. And basically it's, whoever can show up on any given day shows up, and we have a little adventure into the dungeon. I'm playing with Jason Hobbs. We have kind of an occasional game that's just started up again. I play with, actually, I guess I'm running right now for Skype of Cthulhu. So Call of Cthulhu games. And I'm, so at the moment running, but in general, I've been playing with them for 5 or 6 years now, which probably means 10, but I'm going to say 5 or 6 because I think that's what's in my head. I've got a home game, a home 5e game that I'm running, and I'm probably playing in a couple other games too. So yeah, I've been much busier than I should be, having fun playing games.
Well, I find it's one of two things. Like either you're playing a lot of games, or you fall into this trap that is the industry where you're like, oh, I'll do this professionally. That means I'll be playing games all the time. But what happens is, in actuality, is you have far less time to do anything else because you're just working all the time.
Which side did you fall in at the moment?
Right now, I got a pretty happy mix. Like we got a Saturday night game that is kind of like our home game. It's pretty regular. Like it's 3 different groups, so they meet once a month, but we find like we can find people that are willing to show up at least once a month. And then usually on the channel we run a stream, so that we play that game, got like a Saturday morning game. And then just by doing this, like you tend to get invited to do a lot of one shots and stuff like that. So
Sure.
so I've done fairly well with having enough games to play.
Good.
I find with content creators specifically, they'll fall into the trap of like maybe they are playing games, but they're all streamed and they have like no home games that they're involved with. And it's like, and then you start to feel guilty if you ever do something and you don't turn it into content to be consumed.
Yep. Well, and I feel like the other thing, if you're not if you're a content creator in the sense of writer or something, then I feel like a lot of them are always play testing.
Yeah.
So you're never actually just playing. You're always playing and kind of working a little bit.
You're in the lab. You never leave the lab.
Yeah.
So, Brianna, you run a show over on Frog Eye Games as well, right?
It's more of a, so I'm kind of transitioning into the role of like the YouTube person there, and so I've kind of got some other, my sister and I keep referencing my sister because we're kind of like our own unit within the company, but we have a lot of ideas for the YouTube channel and we're slowly building up to that, and I think we've got some cool ideas coming down the pipe. I don't want to say yet just in case it doesn't happen, but we're doing all kinds of like interviews and the like, and probably going to do running some games as well.
Cool. I will keep my eye out. And actually, like when you chopped on, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, you look familiar. And because I think I've seen some of the interviews. At least if nothing else, go by on my feed and they start playing. And I honestly, I don't really watch a whole lot of D&D YouTube nowadays. Just having done this so much, I tend to consume like other content now.
Yeah, you have to diversify a little bit, otherwise your entire life will be like the one thing.
Yeah, and it is already a lot of that anyway. Although I admit I did go down a YouTube rabbit hole last night with the with the Paizo is going to be putting out a 5e adventure converted.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I had resisted for a while, and then I was like, I don't know, Professor Dungeon Master, I got to see what he's got to say. So, but there are plenty. Unfortunately, it's a shorter YouTube rabbit hole because they can go really deep.
Right. Oh. Yeah, this is fresh news. You're not going to be finding too many videos that you have to go watch.
Yeah. So, for the other upcoming project, which is already funded for anyone that is interested in checking out, there's a link in the description. As always, go check it out. What is so you both have been through it. Do you each have a favorite piece of art? Since Brianna, you mentioned the art, can you pick one, baby?
Yes, there is one. Well, okay, so I love a lot of them. Obviously, the dragon with the lady is just I don't know. It's so old school and so cool. But there is one that we featured in the Kickstarter video where it's like a lady dancing and on a blue background with like there's a big pipe organ in one side, and then there's like a man that's like dancing with her. I don't know. There's just something. It's so, I guess, joyful and playful that I'm just like, I love that. And the colors are amazing, just so saturated and vibrant. And I'm just like, yes, that one.
I can't. So I actually went through it before the art was created, and I have seen some of the art, but I haven't actually been through the art like in sequence, and I haven't been through the laid out book, so I can't. I don't have a favorite.
What about
I
favorite,
have seen a bunch of pieces and I liked them, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'll be super excited when I get to go look at the whole thing and do sort of that final review of the laid out book. That's always a fun next step, but I haven't done that yet.
What about a favorite temple?
Yeah, so I think, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. One of them is an outdoor temple that is it's sort of a big jungle temple with a protected area, and the sort of the visual imprint I got from reading that still sticks with me more strongly than many of the others. There's some others that are cool. There's one where there's a bit of a past and present that are getting confused with each other. So that you're operating in the present, but the past keeps coming out at you. And that sort of calls a lot to my more the Call of Cthulhu side of things, where you have some weird stuff where you don't quite understand how the universe works anymore. But I think just from a visual one, do you remember, Brianna, the name of the sort of the jungle temple?
Oh, goodness.
All right.
I'm very bad with names of things. I only know what they are. I'm bad about the being able to remember what's what. But
I was like, I've got the picture clearly. Like as I was reading it, and I was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. There's this big fight scene that happens up here, and the person gets thrown off the sort of floating island down into the jungle, and then there's I've got the whole thing in my head. I can picture the adventure and how it's likely to spin out, but I just do not remember the name of it.
But it's the jungle one.
But it's the jungle one. And it's a fun one. It's got some, because it's not only got a very strong visual, but there's a neat bit of plot twist in there in terms of who you think you're dealing with and who you're actually dealing with, and what happens to the how you end up getting the artifact blessed is sort of interesting from a character perspective. And I think there's some nice social interaction that happens in that temple. So it's sort of that whole adventure piece stood out to me as a fun one.
So are the temples more like places of interest as opposed to being dungeons?
Yes. As opposed to being dungeons. I mean, I hate to say a dungeon's not a place of interest. I mean, they're not all underground. So that some of them feel like your classic, and some of them are definitely underground. I mean, the first one I have actually used in both my home game and in a just sort of a random one shot, one of those, we're going to play D&D in 20 minutes. What are we going to do? And it is a temple where things went awry. It's a burial ground, a burial temple. And it's relatively small, and it's a nice introductory dungeon, but it's definitely a dungeon, right? You go in, you go underground, and you go through, and there's some undead and some other interesting things. And then, of course, whatever you feel like making up to add on top of it. So some of them are definitely dungeons, but some of them are. There's that sky temple too, which is really cool. There's one that's there's one that's in the mountain. The mountains has fallen down, and there's a melting glacier piece. So they're yes, I think places of interest seems good. They're not all just dank, dark, deep places where you go with a torch. Some of them are very much living areas with current cultists of either good or bad religions. And
I guess when I say dungeon too, I mean like a place that you expect your players are going to go fight their way through, go room by room and explore.
Yeah, I would say there's less of that. There's a few that are like that, but most of them are more about interacting with the characters that are in the dungeon, in the temple. Again, some of them are evil and you might want to sneak by them, but because in the end, somehow or other, you've got to get that artifact blessed in effect at each one. And so for most of them, that involves interacting with the priests in whatever form they take of that temple.
Yeah.
So it's not, I would say that most of it is not just go in and kill stuff. I mean, there's plenty of combat, but that's not sort of the prime line to success.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where as the GM, as the game master, the dungeon master, although it's not really dungeons, that kind of, there's that customizability where each individual group can kind of decide, or each game master can kind of decide for their group, hey, what would be the best thing? Is this a group of people that just prefers the hack and slash? In that case, we can keep the whole, we can keep the talking to a minimum but still get the story across. Or are these people who prefer to explore more of the interpersonal stuff? And you can kind of build off of that depending on your group and individually what they might want to do.
So I guess each of you, do you prefer the role as player or GM?
So I have yet to run a full game by myself, mostly just because, again, I play with my family more often than not, and my dad tends to just he's had a lot of experience with it and he's very good at it, so we tend to more often than not just default to him being the GM. But I have considered, and again, at some point I'm definitely going to start running games because I love the world building and the ability to kind of build the story around the people, but for the most part I'm a player.
I think I'm gonna refuse to answer. I love because what I really like, and this is true, I think for most of my hobbies that I get into, is that I really like to be able to switch around. Like I think if I were always a player and I were always playing in the same game, the same rule set, I would probably no longer be part of the hobby. And the fact that I can be a player sometimes and a GM sometimes, and I can play, D&D one day and Call of Cthulhu the next, and, some Fate on the third day or whatever it is, that to me is really what is important about it. And that's why I really enjoy it, is because it pulls different parts of my brain and different parts of my fun. So for me, it really is having all those pieces available.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I always want to be doing the thing I'm not doing. So like if I'm playing a lot, then I kind of want to be the GM. But if I'm GMing a lot, then I want to be the player.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I definitely get the, if I've GM'd a bunch and then I get to just show up and play, boy, it's like, oh, all right. Yeah. I'm going to hang out and have a beer and let's see what's on the movie. Let's see what the adventure is that I'm falling into here.
I had been running a bunch of games, and then they kind of ended, and I just didn't pick up or start any new games. And then I just kind of looked up, and I was like, oh, I haven't run a campaign in like 2 years. How did that happen? Like I'd still run like one shots or whatever, but so I would even, I guess it's not recent. Everything feels recent, but it's not. Within like the last year and a half or so, I'm like, all right, I need to start running more games, and started doing it again. But I was like, how did like 2 years go by without running a campaign?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that you're sort of like, and it definitely moves back and forth for me in terms of what I'm doing more of. And I feel the burnout in both directions. Like I'm like, oh, I've been GMing too much. I'm just too many plot threads, too many decisions, too much work. And then I'm like, wow, I've been playing too much, no control, no big creative pieces. I really want to run something. So yeah, I feel that.
Favorite non-D&D games?
That's a good question. I am a huge Call of Cthulhu fan. I love the mysteries and the creepy. I love creepy things. But also there's a couple of indie games that we've played recently. One I played on the GaryCon stream. It was called Back Again from the Broken Lands, and it was very different than the standard D&D that I was used to, and it took a little bit of getting used to, but it was very interesting because it was almost like a collaborative storytelling adventure instead of just like the GM running the whole thing. The players kind of were able to add to everything, which I thought was a very unique kind of mechanic in that regard.
I mean, Call of Cthulhu's got to be on there. I mean, I probably, you know, by the hour, I think I play almost as much Call of Cthulhu as all the D&D world, you know, which of course for me, for many of us stretches from whatever, you know, Dungeon Crawl Classics and Swords and Wizardry and 5e and OSC. And, you know, so it's all like, to me, and like those to me are DCC. I put outside the D&D box, but only just barely. Like it's still sort of the D&D box. So, and I like all of those, and I've enjoyed them. And again, it's I like to be able to play a little first edition now and then, and I like to be able to play a little fifth edition now and then, and I like to be able to go back and forth. I had a sort of a 15 or 20 year gap from gaming, which started more or less as 2E was coming out and finished just towards the end of 4E. So although I have played Pathfinder and 3.5 and those, they were never sort of central in my gaming life. And so, you know, I play them when I play them, but they're not games, they're not versions that I know really well. But other than that, I'm just sort of looking. I have a list, of course, as a proper nerd of of games that I've played, and I'm trying to see, you know, what sort of stands out. Like Numenera to me has been a fun game from time to time. That's a nicely, you know, and I like running that because it's a flexibly different game. I've enjoyed like Cthulhu Dark and some of the other real rules light games. I remember, I can't say it's one of my favorite games because I've only played it once, but we played a game of Bluebeard's Bride at Necronomicon. I guess that was probably 3 years ago, and boy, is that not something I will ever forget. That was a super intense game that it's just as an experience, as a single gaming experience, that's definitely was up there. I don't know.
Yeah,
Put it in front of me, I'll play it.
Yeah, there's always too many games and not enough time.
Yeah.
We just finished up a stream called Nobody's Heroes, and that was using Cypher System playing a Supers RPG, which is the generic version of Numenera for anyone that doesn't know. Which is weird because they did Numenera first and then they reverse engineered the generic version.
Yeah, that was an interesting switch, and I seems like it worked though. How was it for Supers?
It worked out pretty good. It's I really enjoy Cypher System, but the way I would describe it is Cypher System is a very generic system with a lot of things that are very specific in it. So it makes it kind of difficult if you have certain concepts or whatever. You know, like I said, I like Cypher System. I don't know if it's the best system, the most flexible system as far as running RPGs, but they do have some like interesting ways they do it. Like if you want to play a game where you're going to just make up any hero you could possibly think of, and it's going to do that thing from the very beginning. You know, I can't think of much that beats, you know, Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. But again, it's also like how much crunch do you want to deal with as well?
Right. Yeah. Well, I was thinking actually, as you were talking about even just Cypher System and its specificity, like there's a lot of games that I'm super happy to play and have absolutely no interest in running. Like I will show up and enjoy the heck out of a GURPS game, but I am not going to run that. Like, I do not want to be the person responsible for understanding the rules and sort of figuring out all the little fiddly bits, but I'm perfectly happy to play in a game that has all the fiddly bits and focus on my character and how I can use those fiddly bits. So that's sort of an interesting thing too, of what would I play versus what would I run, and what do I choose to run, even for different types of, like, what would I do for a one shot versus a campaign? I mean, I'm almost at the point for running one shots, especially with good friends, where I'm pretty much happy to sit down, start saying, here's your problem, and roll me a die and tell me how high a number you get, and we'll make up some story from there. Like, I almost don't need rules, like, if it's going to be a short game with with good friends, if it's going to be a con game or if it's going to be a long-term game, I want a little more structure in my life. But
you had mentioned, like, kind of like the OSR games being the same as D&D, and I kind of differentiate them a little bit in this sense, because I feel like OSR games just play differently. I feel like there's a different mindset going into those games than a lot of the more traditional, like, D&D and Pathfinder style games.
so I certainly hear that a lot, and I don't discount it. I feel like if it feels different, it is different, and that's part of it. Where are you, like, when you're sort of drawing the line? Is this sort of a second edition older versus third edition newer, or like in your head?
Probably like third edition newer. But even like AD&D was much different than the box sets, right?
Right. I mean, AD&D to me starts the crunch. Like, AD&D, I mean, it was I'm gonna get stepped on here, but it was a horrible game. I love it. I grew up on it. I will play it any day of the week, but it's a mess. I mean, it's just a hot mess of a game. And I feel like
just real quick to bring Brianna back in, like, what edition did you start with? If your dad started, playing, you started playing with your dad.
So that is a great question. I really don't know. He kind of did a mismatch of,
Yes,
various rules. So it was kind of always like, again, it was just whatever he felt like in the moment, but it was always I feel like it was either third or fifth, but he was, or original. Original, I feel like we played the most, but he never actually came right out and said which one we were doing, because he very rarely had anything other than like a sheet of paper with some notes on it. So
what did you build your characters out of?
So it would be one of two things. Either he would already have the sheets for us, and then we would just go off of that, or maybe we would roll to like populate the stats.
Yeah.
But it was never. It was always kind of. I'm not entirely sure.
Did he inflict THAC0 on you?
THAC0. Remind me what that is again.
So THAC0 is the mechanic that should determine what you need to hit when you roll the D20, and it was 2-hit armor class 0, and it was a very weird, convoluted system where your armor classes descended instead of ascended, and they went from 10 to -10.
Yeah, he did not do that.
Oh, good. Because I was going to say, like, I feel like inflicting THAC0 on your children might be, child services might need to get involved.
Right. Sure. Of course. Yeah.
I mean, you say that, but it was so easy, right? You just have the table. It's the DM's problem. It's not the player's problem. The player says, I rolled a 14. Did I hit?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's easy.
Every once in a while, you'll see a picture, an image of this arcane device that you could have gotten if you had a Dragon magazine subscription, and it is a wheel with what are they called? Not push pins. They're like push pins, but they split on the other side.
The paper holder. In the middle.
So you can turn the wheel to use this arcane device to discern what the magic number was you needed to roll on a D20.
Oh man.
I definitely remember that piece. That was awesome. I mean, and that made it easy, right? You no longer had to worry about any math. But because what I remember was the sort of one of the things I do like about first edition, principally, which is harder to recapture in the other ones, but part of it was because we were kids when I was playing it, but it was confusing enough that it took a long time to suss out what was going on. Like in fifth edition and in any of the OSR, the Swords and Wizardry, the OSE type stuff, pretty much once you figure out that a 14 hits, you figured that out. Whereas in first edition, because the classes were so uneven, and you had that, the flipped armor class, and you had some weird bonuses maybe going on in the dungeon master's mind. It's like, well, I hit with a 17. Yeah, well, I missed with an 18. And, so it's sort of...
Sometimes you needed to roll high. Sometimes you needed to roll low.
Exactly.
I always say about AD&D it's not that there are more rules per se than more modern games. It's just that they were needlessly complex.
Well, there were more systems.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's some of their percentage system, some's a D6 system, some's a roll 20, roll high, some's like, there were just more systems. Now, like 5e is basically one or maybe two systems. I think most of the OSR stuff, I'd say, is two systems, right? You either have a D20 or you have a D6, and that's enough. But so anyway, but sorry. So yes. So the question is, are they different? Yeah, of course they're different. But it, yeah, I think, so much of it depends on how you play the game and what story you're running in. And I it is true that, well, I don't know.
I feel like OSR games tend to test the player more than the character.
I think there's some of that where you get more of the player having to know that you check for secret doors or whatever, that kind of stuff, and that you can put together some crazy scheme out of, you can build these devices if you're clever as a player. Whereas, I think the testing of the player, so to speak, that happens certainly in like Pathfinder. there the player's skill is in, how good a character can you put together, right? So there's still player skill, but it's in a different time of the game, I guess. It's and the 5e has, of course, some of that. One of the other things that I think is interestingly different is that in the old school stuff, your character, in terms of being useful and powerful or whatever, is all about their equipment. Like starting with the 10-foot pole at first level and then the +3 sword at, whatever. Like it's all about the equipment. Whereas definitely in 5e, and I feel like even more so in 4e, it's, your character is magical. Your character becomes powerful. And that's a difference. That definitely feels different to me. So,
my squeezing arm had a question. Any love for Hyperborea? I think that's the Conan game. I have not seen it. I have not seen that at all yet or checked it out. And Shadow of the Demon Lord.
So, Astonishing Swords and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. We're on live. Let me see if I can find my little box here. Here it is. I believe this is what we're talking about here, except that the newest version of it, the 3rd edition, is just called Hyperborea. And absolutely got love for it. It's in my D&D box in my head. Like it's in that, it's definitely pushing into the, Conan swords and sorcery, swords and sandals and whatever you want to call it. It's a flavor, and I super enjoy it. And Jeff Talanian, who's the author behind it, is definitely a good guy doing good stuff. Shadow of the Demon Lord, I actually have not. I think I have not played. And I've heard about it. People have been talking about it around me, but I haven't ended up on the table with it yet. So
we are I think we're 2 sessions in, 2.5 sessions in.
There you go.
To a Shadow of the Demon Lord game right now, it's been a lot of fun. First session, 2 characters died. I had one of the deaths. So.
What sets it apart, or what makes it how do you spin it? What's the description on it?
It's a D20 game. It's a bit more brutal, but it's designed to go from level 0 to level 10. So okay. A campaign is 11 sessions, and you level up essentially after every session, and you just start with your ancestry then you get to level 1 and you get to pick a class. So the way it keeps progressing is kind of cool, because I think there's a novice, an expert, and a master, and they're all like almost like different class choices. So like there's a lot of like branches that you go down, but the way it's presented is so much easier than like if you were to pick up like D&D for the first time, where someone just like drops a stack of books in front of you and you're like, just figure all this out and build your character. Where this is like, you start off and you make one choice. Are you playing an orc or a goblin or a human or a dwarf, right? And then and then you play a session, and then you pick, are you a warrior, rogue, magician, or priest? So it's like very, the way the process brings you along, I find really refreshing, and it's also very brutal.
Right, you're back at level 0 now. You're like, well, I guess I'll be a goblin next time.
Yeah. That would be the AD&D experience for sure that I've had in the past.
Right. We did a DCC campaign some years ago. It was online, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And we did the same thing where we did our 0 level funnel. We did a 1st level adventure, a 2nd level adventure, a 3rd level adventure, 4th and 5th, just because we really wanted to try out the character advancement and see what happened as you got more powerful in DCC. And that was so much fun to just like not have to worry about XP. And like, we're just like, we're going to go, do whatever it tells us to do in the adventure. And then when we're done with it, we're going to go to the next module. And that was a fun set.
Brianna, have they sucked you into Swords and Wizardry yet?
I have played Swords and Wizardry. It's a good one. I'm always, I'm pretty sure within the first 5 minutes, I forgot to check for a trap, and a big old boulder smashed me dead instantly. Luckily, I was able to be revived by our magic user, but that was quite an introduction.
I also feel like that's part of the OSR experience as well, right? Like, don't get attached to your characters.
Oh yes. They I was warned that it is definitely possible that I would need to roll up a second character in mid game, and I was like, wow, this is intense, but it's fun. I do enjoy. I appreciate GMs that don't make you like do the charting, and like they either already know it or like they just can do it for you. It's like, just roll this, and here's if you passed or failed, or here's like whatever the information you need, because that really can slow a game down, I've found. Just as a little side tangent, I suppose.
That is literally how I like to learn games, kind of, because I don't absorb information very well by just like reading a book of text and then showing up, because I'm going to forget everything I read. I'm just kind of like, let me tell you what I want to do, and you tell me what I need to roll.
Yes, that is the best in my personal opinion. I much prefer games and GMs that lean toward that.
So recently, like, I started experimenting with and playing some like Morkborg, and there's another game that's hacked off of Morkborg called Vast Grim, which are OSR games, and they're like that. And like the last game I went through with Morkborg, like my hero started off with 1 hit point, and surprisingly lived. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, 1 hit point is basically as good as 3 most of the time. I mean, you're either going to get hit or you're not.
And then like one of the lines in the Morkborg book is like, well, you can name this character if you want, but there's probably not a point.
We played, I think it was at TotalCon just maybe a month ago or so. We played, I played a game of Morkborg first time, and it was just an off the books, a bunch of folks in the bar late at night. That was pretty fun. It was brutal, definitely a brutal game. But
Morkborg, that's a fun word to say.
It is.
I think that's why it's so popular. It's just fun.
Well, also games. And also the art in it is art. Like, is very crazy. Like the layout of the book. I feel like I have it sitting here somewhere under a stack of books. right? And it's a lot of fun, but the layout is very weird. I had the designer on, and I'm like, I both love and hate that book because it looks gorgeous to look at, but then you're reading it, right? And you're reading something, and you're reading like a normal person, but then all of a sudden the text begins rapping, and to follow the text, you're like turning the book.
Oh,
But
man.
so you mentioned TotalCon. Do you hit a lot of conventions?
When we're not COVIDing, I would say I hit probably 5 or 6 a year. So we have a SnowCon up here in Bangor, Maine, in January, which is a fun little family style con. And then I tend to get to North Texas Con in June because I figure if I can do Maine in January, I can do Texas in June. Total Con in Boston.
You're making for real life survivor roles with each one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just stay inside. That's you just stay inside except for the taco truck. Necronomicon is absolutely one of my favorites. That's every other year in Providence, Rhode Island. Gamehole Con when I can get there, which I missed this most recent one, but I've been to a few of those that I like a lot. I think those are and then I guess we have some friends in the Boston area that have just started. Hopefully it's in a couple of weeks, Rising Phoenix Con, which their first one was supposed to be 2 years ago, last year, whatever. Anyway, it didn't happen. So it's happening in a few weeks. So I'm very excited for them. And I'll go down to that towards the end of April. But yeah, so it's sort of, those are the ones I tend to get to.
What about you, Brandon? Are you a con attender? And also, when I phrase that question also in the sense that, like, I guess the before times.
Yeah. So in the before times, we used to go to just general Comic Cons like all the time. Anytime we could get to ones nearby, we would go do that because we're me and my sister, and we actually managed to get my dad one time. We're big into cosplay, so it's a lot of fun. And we went to the North Texas RPG Con a couple times, and we're going again. In this next time as well. And then Frog Goddess said, "Hey, there's some other ones we want you to check out." And we're like, "Okay, we'll do it." Because always fun to get out and see the world and get to do some networking and the like, and also just be around a lot of games. It's always fun.
Yeah, I guess this past year I hit Gen Con and then PAX Unplugged. And Gen Con was kind of last minute. I was just like, I wasn't going, and then I was just like, oh, I'm just tired of being cooped up.
Yeah, I've not made it to Gen Con, and I'm not sure I will, because I'm just so many people, so much. And but it does, I feel like I ought to, but I feel like going to something like that because I ought to, just like, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Not a motivating factor. My first experience with conventions, because like I really didn't hit conventions until after we started doing Nerdarchy. And my first one was Origins, which was really big. And then my next one was the 5th Gen Con 50. Oh, wow. And which was because Gen Con is like the whole city is like the convention, basically. And
Wow.
It's just so like it's so sprawling. And then after that was PAX Unplugged, and my partner Ted, he's been to a lot more conventions to me, but they've all been like small and local. And when he went to PAX Unplugged, he's like, "Oh, this is so much bigger than the cons I've been to." And I was like, I'm kind of disappointed. I think this is a little bit on the small side. I know it's their first year and all, but it's PAX, so like they've done so many of these. Did they really get to claim a first year? So it's funny to like the difference in our experiences.
I went right before COVID. Lloyd Metcalf, who's a gamer, artist, author, publisher, he started AppleCon in Southern Maine during apple picking season, and it was basically in the barn of a hotel. Like it was 40 of us, and that was a great con too. Like, I don't know, I feel like once you have 6 people, well, maybe more than that, once you have 5 GMs worth of tables out there, I'm pretty well happy. That's that's enough.
A
But
barn. How many hotels have barns?
Yeah.
exactly.
That does sound like fun, but also I'm guessing too. Depending on the season, that one can be brutal. A barn doesn't sound like a particularly cool nor warm place.
Yeah, no, yeah, you got to choose the month carefully and then cross your fingers.
So, what are some of the stretch goals coming back to the Kickstarter? What are some of the stretch goals that are coming up that you can talk about?
I feel like you're going to make us work now.
You know,
So I'm just headed over
you
to the
can just make
Kickstarter
stuff up
page.
if you want. I don't care.
I
won't
will. I
tell.
will.
Every backer gets a pony. Every
Yeah.
backer.
We're gonna make it up, and then we're gonna have to unfortunately figure it out. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not very
We go to
very
Zach.
good.
So we might have promised some things.
Yeah.
Zach, get on this. Let's see. So we are currently at 50,000. We just passed the 50,000 stretch goal, so that's awesome. And this we are apparently as I said, I've been gaming too much, and so I have not been actually doing my job here. Here we go. Stretch goals. There we go. Look at that. Okay. So we have bonus adventure. Oh, nice. That is awesome. So the acid swamp of the demon prince. So this one is so one of the fun things about this game as it's set up is that there are these postcards that the GM will have that can be given to the players as their characters finish various adventures. And they're postcards from other adventurers, maybe. It's a little bit mysterious, but they just get these notices. And if they do all the adventures and get all the postcards, they can put that together to give them the information that will encourage them, if they're so inclined, to go on to this last adventure. And to me, I love some of that sort of gamey stuff part of game, like the thing about a box set, or what, this isn't a box set, but the thing about that idea is that you can get all these other pieces in. So that's the stretch goal that we just hit, is that extra adventure. It looks like the next few after that are, and this is something we've been thinking about more at Frog God, is basically supporting the campaign. So we've got a player's guide and a GM's journal, some things that will allow the players and the GM respectively to keep track of what's going on. So the GM can say, oh, well, this important NPC got killed or met the players and hates them or loves them or whatever it is in adventure 3. So when they show up, back in adventure 7, this is what, this is my notes. And then of course, for the players, they can keep track of how their characters are doing and how they're doing with the artifact. And then it looks like we have some further out, we've got some more NPCs, some more content. So most of it is content, but those two, the GM's journal and the player's guide, are sort of extra pieces. There's a lot of nice, because this is such a long campaign, there's a lot of the sort of random encounters are done on sort of a bigger scale. And basically, as you increase in power, as you become more famous, as you get your artifact more and more upgraded, the people hear about you, and that's both the good guys and the bad guys. And so this is basically strengthening up, adding some more information to help the GM with things that you might encounter between the temples, or people that might be waiting for you with a baseball bat outside the temple when you come out. That kind of thing. So that's at 70,000. The Dogs of Orcus. Those are bad guys, by the way. I don't know if that's a spoiler. And then it looks like we've got some map upgrades, map books, and that kind of thing down the pike beyond that. So all good stuff.
Are there any upcoming projects you guys can talk about that haven't been announced yet?
Yes. I'm going to talk about one. I don't care. And I'm going to talk about it because I wrote it. So one that I wrote this actually quite a while ago for back when I was with Lesser Gnome. So it was originally part of Death and Taxes, Whisper and Venom with Zach, and it's called Dwarven Fiasco. And it's it's kind of a humorous adventure with it's got some wordplay in it. It's but basically there's a mountain temple that was a dwarven temple, and things went wrong, and now it's run by a dwarven lich, and the player characters have to go clean stuff up in there. But I have been working with a new layout art. Basically, I've been able to sort of do my dream of like, well, we're going to get a new set of dwarven runes created instead of using the Norse runes that everybody's been using for decades. So I've got some new runes. We've got the art being created. I've got like 10 or 12 new creatures in the appendix, because I was, from like the the spirits of some alcoholic spirits that are some creature that you can encounter. Of course, they're invisible, but they do mess you up. And there's some food that has gotten a little bit uppity, food that bites you. So a lot of stuff like that. And this is just going to be an Indiegogo. So it's it'd be a relatively small adventure. It's probably maybe 8 hours, 10 hours of playtime. But I'm very excited because I've been working with a new layout person, and she has been just going above and beyond in terms of having some nice creative ideas. So I think it's going to be a very nice visual book. And of course, I think the adventure is great because it was written by a really good author.
No biases there here.
Right. Exactly.
Now, is that a Frog God project, or is that something independent?
That is going to be the answer is neither. So we actually have Necromancer Games, which both predates us and is also completely owned by us. And so more or less, it's a little bit messy, but more or less things that are in the Lost Lands are Frog God, and all our other stuff is Necromancer Games. So this is actually going to be, I'm pretty sure this is a Necromancer Games, will be a Necromancer Games release. But it's us. It's all the same. We're all the same.
I do remember Necromancer Games from 3rd edition.
Yep. Yeah. So that's our root. So that's the same Necromancer Games, but it's sort of just spun around a little bit in terms of who's owning and what we're doing.
What about you, Brianna? Do you have anything else you're working on? Or is it all your attention right now in the Frog God Necromancer territory?
I mean, personally, I'm working on my 3rd book, but beyond that, it's kind of like I've published a couple of novels under the name Lee Beard is my middle name, because why not? But other than that, I'm not really doing too much. Well, I'm not doing too much besides all of my billions of hobbies and 2 jobs.
Yeah. That will keep you jumping for sure. I want to take one final question from the chat. Brian wants to know which monster in Splinters of Faith would best representative of the aesthetic for the adventure.
Yeah. Mind if I get back to you in a day after I talk to the author? Which monster? All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up the creature appendix, and I will, if I can't find something in the next few seconds, I will refuse to answer here.
Nice. How many creatures are in that appendix?
All right, so I just opened it up. The 5e appendix is
my favorite number.
40, 50 pages. It's still opening. That's how long it is.
Yeah.
60 pages, 70 pages. It's a lot. So that's it's a lot of monsters is what it is. I can't choose one. I mean, they're literally, there's probably
close to 80 monsters, since there's 80 pages.
85 pages.
That's insane.
So yeah, so it's going to be 80, 90 creatures that are not available for free online, right? So this is above and beyond SRD, or this is just the stuff that isn't out there.
I've seen smaller monster books.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. No, we one of the things that has really been fun, I think, as we've been doing a lot of this stuff, is part of the value in my mind. Like if I'm a GM and I'm buying a thing, and if I get a whole bunch of new monsters, if I get a bunch of new magic items, new spells, that's all like that's gravy, and I'll use those sometimes independent. So yeah, I cannot answer that. Oh, you can.
I actually can. I would say ultimately it's the big bad, the ultimate big bad of the entire game is the Dread Death Priest Akruel Rathamon. That's the one you are building the relic to defeat by the end of it. So I'd say, yeah, we got a picture of him in the Kickstarter video. He's kind of spooky.
Nice. That pretty much sums it up. So we're at the hour mark. For each of you, if you could be so kind to kind of final thoughts on what had before we head on out.
Go buy it. I don't know. What are you looking for final thoughts? Splinters of Fate. It's going to be awesome.
It could be whatever your final thoughts can be whatever you want.
I think just thank you for having me on. This has been super fun to chat with you. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, agree. This was a very fun time. Thank you so much for inviting us. And yeah, definitely go check out Splinters of Faith if sounds like it might be up your alley. And because it's, again, the artwork is amazing and the stories are amazing, and it's just a raucous good time.
Like I said, I love the granny on the dragon, because at first it's like, is that a hag? And then it's like, no, that really just looks like someone's grandmother. So thank you both for being on. As always, folks, links are in the description, so go check them out. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Was that successful?